I was reading in the comments on this itch version some interpretations of it as possibly living with a parent who suffers from addiction and how that can affect a family. And I can definitely see it as an allegory for that. But also is just a creepy story digging
I
into the
I
dirt.
think it's just a story about a tall dad digging dirt.
You have nothing deeper behind it.
I'm Emmy.
I'm Annie.
Welcome to our first itch.io snack mix episode.
But first, we wanted to talk about the news. The biggest thing that happened in gaming since our last episode released was Nintendo had their Switch 2 Direct, introducing all of the specific features of the Switch 2, as well as revealing its price point for the console itself and the games. And everything costs more than expected, which was already a blow. And then our current president announced steep tariffs against all of our allies for some reason, and then Nintendo canceled pre-orders, or rather put pre-orders on hold for the Nintendo Switch in America, and we're still waiting with bated breath to find out just how much more we'll have to pay based on the already high price of the console. That actually isn't the news that I wanted to talk about today, but it is corollary. The more important thing I learned, as Polygon reported recently, was that actually about a third of Switches are manufactured in Vietnam, and most of those have been earmarked for sale in the US already, and many of them are already here somewhere. There are Nintendo
Oh,
Switch
interesting.
2s. Yes, there are Nintendo Switch 2s in the country right now. So my news is, Emmy, do you want to do a heist with me?
I think if we're gonna do a heist, we shouldn't advertise that we're doing a heist.
It's the perfect cover. If we say, let's do a heist, and then a heist happens, why would it be us? We're not that stupid. I can't actually do a heist. I do want to Switch 2 real bad, though. I can't buy it on launch because of my financial situation, and also we can't even pre-order it yet anyway. But I do want to Switch 2 eventually. Anyway, that's my news. In case anyone does want to do a heist, it seems possible in the United States right now. The Switch 2 is here somewhere. I don't know where. Polygon didn't say where, but they're here.
Ocean Switch 2.
Sure. Soderbergh can direct the adaptation of your crime,
Oh, I
depending
guess
on
the Ocean's movies are that's about the number of people.
yes.
I think in my head, Ocean's 11 was the 11th movie.
If it helps, they did like add a person each time, which then translates to the title. So they
Okay,
still
so
sort
I'm
of have
not,
one, two, three.
yeah, I'm not totally off.
It does at this point feel like the only way I'm ever getting a Switch 2, at least this year, would be through a heist. Otherwise, no chance, no way. What about you?
There's still also like the fantasy of having a wealthy patron.
One day. The other Switch 2 item I wanted to touch on briefly is that, first off, one of my favorite 3DS era games, Bravely Default, is actually getting an HD release on Switch 2, which is cool. But it is getting it on one of the game cards they announced, which is actually just an invitation to download the game, which isn't new for Nintendo. Some Switch games that are ports of more software heavy or software intensive games, like for example, the BioShock trilogy that was ported to Switch. If you bought the physical game card, it actually wasn't the full game. There was a lot you still had to download in order to play it. I just don't love this trend because I like having a physical game and I like not having to download most of it if I've purchased a physical card that will cost more than the download version anyway. But I am happy Bravely Default itself is getting an HD remake, especially because the Switch 2, not to spoil it for people, including you, Emmy, I want you to play it one day, but especially because the Switch 2 has hardware capabilities that are actually crucially necessary for experiencing the game in its fullest form that the Switch original wouldn't have been able to accommodate.
Do you have feelings about Bravely Default 2?
Do I have feelings? Well, depends on what you mean. Do you mean Bravely Default, Bravely Second, or Bravely Default 2? My feelings on Bravely Default 2 is that it rocks. My feelings on Bravely Second is also that it rocks. I think it's a great
Oh,
series
okay.
and very worth playing. If you want to borrow my copy for Switch, you can.
Okay. We'll see when I find time to do it. Since we've been doing this podcast, all I want is to just play video games all the time.
Big same.
It got me out of a rut, actually. I think I was in a little bit of a rut with games, and like needing to play a certain game for this podcast has like made that exciting again.
I've often joked that friendship with me is discussion section for the assigned reading.
That's accurate, but not in a bad way.
Not in a
I
bad
love
way.
discussion section. I love reading seminars.
So I'm glad I've been able to carry that into our gaming as well. And that's it for the news. I promise I'm not actually doing a heist.
I'm gonna edit that out and then frame you.
Cool. Thank you. Friendship. Anyway, that's my news. Okay, so today we're going to be playing a few short indie games that we found on Itch. One of them I actually played a long time ago before it was an Itch upload, but the others are new games from various game jams. We figured we'd call it a snack mix because the games are short and they're all quite different from each other. So it's just a nice little variety to snack on. The first one that I looked at was a game called Scale the Depths for the 2024 Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam. It was actually one of the winners. It got a lot of good feedback, and now the developers, Glass Gecko Games, have made a wishlist page on Steam for a full version. The theme of the game jam was, quote, built to scale. So they took that and ran with it. The premise is you play as a robot who literally was built to scale, as in it scales fish. But the premise then is there's a fishing loop. You actually like harvest fish, get them from the depths, then you bring them up to your boat, and then you scale the fish, and then you feed them to hungry sea creatures that come your way. You start off with a simple turtle, and it gets crazier from there. So, Emmy, what was your experience with Scale the Depths?
I had a lot of fun with Scale the Depths. I probably spent like at least an hour playing it. You can level up your fishing hook, your fishing line, and the
And your
implement
knife.
you are using, your knife to scale fish. And I definitely wanted to play enough to upgrade all of those, and I did. And the more you upgrade your fishing line, the further you can get down in the ocean, and the more expensive fish are lower in the ocean. And so I definitely wanted to get like all the different types of fish. So I had a lot of fun playing this. I played it on my laptop on itch.io and had a lot of fun. I really like the vibe of it. I love that the boat is called SS Ligma.
I saw that. There's definitely a real sense of humor to the game in many aspects of its short runtime. There's the SS Ligma situation. There's also all of the fish that you catch most of them are real fish. Like the options are cod and sardines that pop up at first, and then they get a little crazier as you go deeper, like ocean sunfish, for example. They all have their name and they're like drawn very beautifully in this cute pixel art style, and then they have a description. And my favorite was probably one of the fish that you can only get in the very depths. That is the most expensive one, the Leviathan. The description of that one is just in all caps: nightmare, nightmare, nightmare. I had a good time with.
The last fish, Leviathan, is so huge. I love it because it like is so big that it expands past like the constraints of the screen. So you can only like scale the area that you can see. I thought that was really fun. Something I would love. So they're planning on building this out into a full game to sell on Steam, from what I understand. And something that I would love in the full or expanded version is like a notebook of the fish that you've caught, so you can look back at them. Because, like, I didn't notice the description, for example, on the Leviathan until you told me about it. And I love having a notebook that's like, you can tell whether you've, like, completed your collection and run into all of these things.
I think too, if in an expanded edition they had different maps. Like in this little itch version, there's only one map and you can get as deep as you can once you've upgraded everything. And the way that you scale the depths in this case is you have your fishing line and a hook or harpoon or whatever at the end of it, and you guide the hook down, and you have to like go around rocks and other formations as you get to the depths. So I think another map, like in a different environment, like a different type of sea where you would find different fish, like as a new level, would be really cool. So then that would also lend itself to like a bestiary.
It's also really fun to fish in it because you can, like, go in loop-de-loops. Like, you're
Yeah,
literally
not
just
realistic.
moving with A and D, like the arrow keys basically, you're just
Hmm.
moving it around and it can, like, do loop-de-loops and, like, double back on itself, and I think that's really
Yeah.
silly and fun.
So that's the fishing function. And then the second function is actually scaling the fish to prep them for your guests. And it's very simple. You have the knife, you move it with your mouse, and it says move your knife from left to right to scale the fish. Careful, if you do it too fast, you might harm the fish and it'll be worth less money. It very clearly says left to right. I went from right to left for like the first three fish. I was like, why is this going so terribly? I've read the instructions. I was going from right to left. That's what happened.
That's interesting.
I
Because
don't know
I
why I
think
did that.
even without, I don't think I read the instructions. I think it was pretty to
I
me
know,
to go.
okay.
Because, like, also, like, they do a good job of the pixel art of the scales on the fish, or
Yeah,
sort
they're
of
in a
like
pretty
look
clear
like
direction.
you have to get underneath them, and then same thing with, like, if you were actually looking at a fish that you had to scale where the tail is, I think you sort of know which way you have to go underneath.
I'm not proud of this, okay? I just figured I'd put it out there.
It's so interesting that you went right to left too, because we speak and read English famously a left to right language.
Anyway, but I got the hang of it eventually. And it becomes easier as you buy better knives. Or I like that you were more expansive in your definition of what a knife was, which is implements to.
Yes.
Because eventually the best one that you can get is straight up a katana. That's
No,
what you
it's a
need.
claymore.
Oh, the claymore! I forgot about the
Yeah.
claymore. I liked the katana best, I guess. But yeah, the claymore also.
Yeah, the claymore is really fun because it's huge. So when you have, like, a tiny fish, it's just like you can't even not immediately scale the whole thing. But then if you
Hmm.
get other really big fish, all of a sudden the claymore is, like, much smaller in comparison to the
Yeah.
giant fish. So I thought the, like, playing with of scale was
Hmm.
really fun there
Yeah.
too. I think it's so silly and fun that you're, like, feeding fish to sea creatures, and the sea
Right.
creatures also got really fun.
They did. Yeah, you start with the turtle and then you end up getting like larger and larger creatures. Like there was an octopus and then a shark, an orca, and then a mermaid. You had the mermaid pop up, right? At some point. Well, there's the mermaid and then the kraken. That one takes a lot to feed, but if you have a leviathan to feed it, that fills it right up immediately.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
for some reason all of these sea creatures carry currency and pay you in it, and then that's what you use.
They pay you the big bag of money, which I thought
Yeah.
was really funny.
They pay you in big bags of money, like your Scrooge McDuck carrying around your gold, and then
Yeah.
yeah, that's what you use to buy all the upgrades.
I think this is really fun. I can't wait to see what they do as they spend more time on it.
Yeah, I would love a bit of story to go with this one too. What does this robot think of their job? How did they get out here? Do they know any other people as they sail around the world feeding the sea creatures? Why are you employed feeding sea creatures? Aren't they hunters who do that themselves? Maybe not anymore. I don't know. The only thing that I think of, and I think of this with any game that involves resources, is there responsible fishing practices in this game? Like, are we overfishing? Is this an issue with these
Going back
robots?
to our conversation about potion permit and the
Yes. No, genuinely. Uh,
yeah.
I really love these types of games, and game development always says more in terms of like more resources to gather, like you power up to be able to do more at once. And I wonder what a game would look like that isn't necessarily about more.
Mm,
But that doesn't have to be this
yeah.
game. I just wonder.
No, yeah, it doesn't have to be this game, but I do think I mean, it's the same thing we talked about in the Potion Permit episode about, like, I think it's an interesting challenge to be like, what does it look like when your resource isn't infinite? That said, I do think there's, like, something interesting about the place where we see that most often is mobile games that have, like, dark nudges to try and get you to spend money, right? Like,
Oh.
usually those resources aren't infinite. They're intentionally constrained so that you have to spend money or time or continue revisiting it. The design of it is structured so that you have limited resources to extract resources from the player. And so what does it look like to do that in a way that isn't coercive?
Yeah. Secretly, every episode these days is an Infinity Nikki episode.
Yeah.
Just talking about resources and extracting them from players.
Yeah, every episode from, like, almost the very beginning to who knows how long in the future, infinite time in the future.
But you guys will know.
We'll have the context of me playing Infinity Nikki in the background.
But yeah, overall, Scale the Depths, I see why it was one of the winners of the Game Jam. It's enchanting. It looks like also it has a kind of large team. Glass Gecko Games lists 7 people on their page who've worked on their games before. A lot of them are software engineers for their day job, and then they're doing the art and the sound design on the side. It's really cute. And they have some other games on their page as well that I'm excited to check out, including one called Zeitgast, an epic prehistoric adventure. One called Monsters Saving the Princess, which is also a fun little thing. That was a puzzle game.
Yeah. They just have a really good gameplay loop.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, like, whatever you build around that loop, like, it's gonna have a lot of success. Hopefully it will have success for me by having a really great gameplay loop.
I wonder too how much this is influenced by a game that I bought and haven't played yet, because I know it will become my life when it does, but Dave the Diver. Have you played that one? Isn't that one also a...
Yeah,
you
didn't play Dave the Diver?
No, I have it on my Switch, but I haven't played it. So I just
played
know
a lot
that
of Dave the
is...
Diver.
Yeah, how does that compare to this then? Because I know basically you do go fishing and then you make sushi for customers. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is similar. Like, it has a similar gameplay loop of, like, you go fish, you prepare the fish, or, like, you do something to, like, change the fish, and then you make money, and then you can upgrade your stuff by making money. But I think there's room in the world for things with alternatives on that gameplay loop. And maybe that's why I enjoyed this so much, is, like, I did really enjoy Dave the Diver. And
True.
I enjoyed that gameplay loop a lot. But I think the scaling mechanic is really fun.
Yeah, I agree.
And it feels very much like, that feels unique, and also it feels like, I guess I've never scaled a fish myself, so I can't tell you if it feels accurate, but like, I found myself sort of doing this incremental staggering of pushing the knife through. So in my naive world, at least, that felt accurate, and it felt like a fun mechanic. And it could be like they have some really crazy fish that, like, have a more complex pattern that you have to follow to scale them.
Right.
Could be fun.
That could be good. I just enjoy fishing mini games in any game. Like, even in Stardew Valley, where a lot of people, it's the bane of their existence. I could fish all day in Stardew Valley.
I love fishing mini games.
So the fact that there's now games that are just fishing is prime to me. Dredge, too. I really enjoyed Dredge for that.
Yeah. Every game should have a fishing mini game, whether it makes sense or not.
Right? Like, even Hades has a fishing mini game. Although that one is deeply frustrating to me because the fish appear so rarely.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. And that's one of my core complaints about Hades.
The only problem
is, I wish that fish showed up more often. It's a perfect game except for that.
I agree. Fully agree.
Do we want to talk about Bulbo's belief system?
Yes, please. That scales the depths.
Great.
Next, we have Bulbo's belief system, which Emmy found, so I will let her introduce it.
Yes. I think it's giving me a lot of credit to say I found it. I scrolled down a page and I was like, this looks cute. Yeah, so Bulbo's belief system is a puzzle platformer This was also made for a game jam, for the Big Mode game jam. That game jam had a theme of power, and you could take any interpretation of power that you want. And so this group decided to develop this game with the idea of like the power of beliefs. And so I think this game jam took place like a little over a week. And I think they came out with something really charming and interesting and novel. The conceit of this game is you play as Bulbo, this little light bulb shaped guy who's moving about his environment, and Bulbo basically has no beliefs about anything at first. And then the first interaction you get is someone walking along who has an idea of moving, and he gives that belief to Bulbo. And so Bulbo can now move. And so that's sort of the main mechanic of this game, is that you get new ideas about things that you can do. Like, for example, the idea of gravity. Now you like are affected by gravity and will fall down rather than just floating across the screen or jumping. And then the other main mechanic of this is that you can forget beliefs. So sometimes you have to think about turning off gravity, basically. So I thought this was really fun. It kind of reminded me of Baba Is You in the sense of like I found it challenging. Maybe I'm just stupid, but like I found it fairly challenging after a few levels where you have to. The puzzle is that you're manipulating the actual game world and like the physics of the game world through this system of Bulbo's beliefs. So yeah, you basically have to get through the levels by picking and choosing what beliefs and getting to different characters that have different beliefs. And I ended up stuck on maybe like the 4th level. So I'm curious if
Wait, I'm so relieved because I also got stuck on like the 4th or 5th level. I was gonna say, Emmy, I come to you penitent with a confession. But it turns out we have the same confession, so that's fine.
I spent like a good deal of time trying to get unstuck. But that's the thing that's really hard when you're playing these games that just came out of a game jam that don't necessarily have guides or a community around them, is that like I can't just like go on Reddit and be like, how do you beat this level of Bulbo's belief system?
Right. Like even the comments are mostly just, of course, like lovely, nice comments where they really enjoyed it. And nobody telling you how to do anything. So maybe they were just better at this than we were. But yeah, I thought the mechanic of forgetting beliefs that you encounter was really interesting, partly because I'm also just so jealous of Bulbo, who looks like a little light bulb, by the way, basically like the embodiment of ideas. I also really enjoy, by the way, all of the beliefs that you encounter are held by other characters, and they have names and they repeat. The character that, for example, embodies gravity has an apple for a head, like Newton discovering
and his
name
is Newton.
And his name is Newton. So I thought that was really charming as well. Mostly I'm just jealous of Bulbo for being able to just forget stuff and really forget it. I too would like to be able to just delete certain beliefs. That would be extremely useful. And yeah, the puzzles do get more complicated as you go because they introduce new actions and beliefs as you go, as well as different ways for those beliefs to be disseminated to you. So the level that we seem to have both gotten stuck on is one where there's a television, right, that is blasting a belief out in like a cloud versus the people, which you have to walk right past and like touch in order to get the belief. So that means you can't, when you're in that cloud, that like area of effect around the TV, forget that thing, even though it might be useful to forget it, such as the gravity when you would be falling down.
There's also a limit on how many beliefs you can hold at one time. So right. In this level, for example, you have a limit of 4 beliefs, which I assume is how you get through the like not getting gravity. Is that like your brain is too full of these beliefs?
True.
But I just couldn't make my order of operations get there because you have to do some like holding and throwing of a character and like moving it to a position. So and you can also hold characters and like have that belief at the same time. I just couldn't make the order of operations work.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a way. You're so right that you must have to hold 4 beliefs and just not gravity to get over that chasm and finish the level. I didn't get there either. But it is basically a complicated order of like, okay, if I delete this belief, I can get through this part of the level, but not the next part. I actually need that belief back. So how do I make it so that I can get that belief back once I get through the part where I shouldn't have it? It was really clever.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really good puzzle design. It, did the great thing of like a really interesting complex puzzle game where I was like, I must be stupid. Because I can't do this. Another piece of it, like the two aesthetic pieces of it that I really liked is, first of all, just like Bulbo as a character is such a great choice of like a name, and he's shaped like a light bulb. It
Mm-hmm.
just feels so right for a character who's like has a light bulb and learns about this thing. And then the other thing that I really liked about it that I found a big part of the charm is this like game narrative that is typed along the screen, and it just really looks like storybook text. It looks like it's like
Yeah.
from a Dr. Seuss book. And that felt really like appropriate, and I thought was a
Mhm.
really fun and neat way of putting a little bit of like narrative and instruction in there. Is like having these words that look like, you know, you're part of a
Mhm.
storybook or a children's book on there.
Yeah. Did you look up anything about the developer? I'm seeing Sven von Brand.
I see the authors on itch are Sven von Brand, Horenos, Horenios, and the Sylar. As always, with people's internet names is hard.
It looks like he's part of a collective called Abstract Digital,
Mm-hmm.
who make small games and also interactive experiences in general. So maybe like alternate reality games, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't go back and play it, but that's just because I'm lazy, not because I didn't enjoy it. I would like to be able to beat it one day and feel less silly,
Yes.
but it was really fun for what I did
Yeah.
play.
Yeah. If anyone goes and plays it and is able to get through the level with
The big chasm with the gravity TV, at
yes,
least
with the
yeah for
gravity
me.
TV where the characters are jump, block, like adding and removing blocks from the area, throwing and gravity. Yeah. Whoever, if anyone can get past that, tell me how.
Please. Also, I will say that belief about walls was the funniest thing to me. You can acquire belief about like walls, which then block your way, but then you can forget the belief, and then the walls go away. And if I could just forget walls and then walk
Yeah.
through them by forgetting them, game
Yeah.
changer. Okay, so that's Bulbo's belief system. We have one more game in the snacks mix that we wanted to talk about today. It is called My Father's Long, Long Legs by Michael Lutz. I chose this one because we were looking for a narrative one to land in our snack mix, and we had some technical issues with another one, although I'll happily still link the other one that we were thinking of playing. This one I picked because a friend of mine introduced me to it in my writing MFA, and it has definitely affected how I think about how a simple interactive narrative game can be so engaging and how it can stay with you. It's a creepy one. It was originally made in 2013, so the itch hosting of it is a port. I originally played it when it was on a different website. I think just like a proprietary one from Michael Lutz, so it was formatted a little bit differently there. And I've even written a short story of mine that was published earlier this year, actually like partly was inspired by playing this. That's called The Buried House, and once we talk about this game, you can probably see why I was inspired to write something that involved burial after all this.
I was curious after I played this if the buried house was inspired by this.
Partly, yes. There was a
Yeah.
lot in The Buried House, but partly that. So, Emmy, what did you think of My Father's Long, Long Legs?
Horrible. I hated it. It was distressing. I'm just kidding. It was like it did its job, which was to make me feel uneasy and unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that way, it was very successful and I think really interesting. Um, I think it would have hit differently if I hadn't already read your short story.
Oh,
Because just in the sense of like, I recently read a thing about like an unsettling thing about burial, which was your short story. And so I was like, huh, burials, dirt,
interesting.
Slender
Below.
Man.
So the premise of this story, it's a narrative game, so mostly what you're doing is reading and then clicking. Is it's written in the first person. It's a young woman. We don't know how old they are when they're telling the story, but it's a woman talking about how when she was growing up, her father became obsessed with digging a hole in their dirt floor basement, and how eventually that compulsion took over his life and caused their mother to leave him. And then it's about the one time she and her brother returned to their childhood home to speak with their father and what they found there. So most of the mechanics are clicking one bolded part of a sentence to reveal the next part, and then it branches a little bit as you go through. It's all in, the background is in black, the words are all in white, and it does tell you to play with headphones. Mostly it's quiet until a certain moment. And so I thought with all of that simplicity, it was really able to make a statement when it deviated from that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought that some of the creepiest parts were when the next bit of text didn't appear right after you clicked, but instead it made you wait. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
a moment when the main character returns to her childhood home. She's at the door to the basement, which has clearly been, like, dug way, way deep into the ground by now. And she's trying to see if her brother, who entered the house before her, is going to come back upstairs. And the sentence is, I stood there and waited. And then it does make you wait until the next words appear. Is really good and creepy. I was creeped out once again, even though I've played through this multiple times.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how many times you've read it. Have you like followed all the paths?
Yeah, I have. Although I didn't do a bunch of the new paths. There aren't really new paths. I actually, the only thing I think, and I don't know if it was added because I have trouble remembering. I played this for the first time in like 2021. One of the comments said that there's a humming that plays in this version of the game.
Oh, yeah.
You eventually, as you're seemingly approaching the father in the basement, digging still after all these years, there's a humming of the song "You Are My Sunshine," and one of the comments seemed to say that that wasn't in the original, but that it's very effective. And I can't quite remember, but yeah, I've played all the different options. Most of the time, when you play the different options, the information that would have been revealed to you by clicking, for example, information about your brother first instead of your mother, it plays later anyway. So you don't
Yeah.
really lose anything by picking another path or change anything for that matter either, which is fine to me. It's not the type of game where I hoped I would be able to change the outcome. It's just nice to be part of it, to be able to click a button and get to see what happens next.
Well, I think the place where that is really effective is in when you're like navigating the basement of
Mm.
trying to find your brother. There's like four different options, and sometimes they loop back around to the same options, sometimes they move to something different. But it does a really effective job of making you feel unsettled and not sure of your place and like getting kind of disoriented. So
Yeah,
I think that's really effective.
I thought so too. That was something that I was thinking even now as I played it again. Because at that point in the story, you've returned to this house where your father has been digging in the basement for years, and it's just a labyrinth of paths into the dark, dark dirt. So you're trying to find your brother and even your father if he's still down there digging, which it becomes apparent he is because a digging sound starts to play. And that's why they've told you to play with headphones on. And it is jarring and very creepy. The digging sound continues as you play through this section. And you can go left or right or follow the sound of the digging. If you click, you think you're walking in circles. That's when it lets you, at least I think that's the main way it lets you move forward in the story. Then there's a new mechanic that gets introduced for this section of the game as well, and it's the flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
So then you actually are only able to see the words that are available to you because you've gotten a flashlight and you move it with your cursor over the board. And then I think that the flashlight is used to get through one of the most effectively creepy bits of the game, which is the very, very end. Emmy's making a face, a frowny face. It's so unpleasant, I assume, is why.
I did not like it.
Yeah, what was
Well,
your.
I liked the choice of it. I didn't enjoy the experience of it. I did what, you know what I mean? It was upsetting.
It's spoiler alert, but Emmy, can you please describe what it was that made you so uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, so the theme also throughout the story is, or recurrence throughout the story is that as your father is digging, his legs are getting longer. He's growing taller because he always can like step out of the hole that he's digging.
Mm.
And so at the very end, you like have your flashlight and you just see legs that keep going.
Hairy legs. Reminds me a little bit of some Shel Silverstein drawings, though,
Yeah, a little
in
bit.
style, which always had a level of creepiness to them as well. Like delightfulness, but creepiness. I was reading in the comments on this itch version some interpretations of it as possibly living with a parent who suffers from addiction and how that can affect a family. And I can definitely see it as an allegory for that. But also is just a creepy story digging
I
into the
I
dirt.
think it's just a story about a tall dad digging dirt.
You have nothing deeper behind it, but it is an effective one, however you want to interpret it, I think.
I think there is something this is again I guess bringing how you bring parts of yourself to a story, but like there's something really eerie about like both obsession and consistency because it's all the father wants to do and he sort of has this compulsion to keep doing it and he does it very consistently. So there's something just sort of eerie about that. And I'm roasting myself here because I think when I am going through like a what I call like an OCD meltdown of like I'm feeling very distressed about something and I'm now performing a repetitive task over and over again, I think it's very scary for someone to watch and like I think especially for my partner to like deal with me during those moments because it's like I think it's very unsettling to see like a person just like nothing in their eyes walking in like a really specific circle pattern. I think is like really creepy. So sorry to my partner for that. But so there's something really eerie about that, and then there's something really eerie about life continuing on around it. Like there's the contrast between like your father doing this weird, strange thing in the basement, and then also like coming up for dinner, or like he no longer came up for dinner once I started high school is like a line in it. And this idea of like they're still going to school, they're going to high school while this thing is happening in their basement is like
Right.
that contrast makes it really eerie.
One of the details that really sticks out to me, just in terms of the eeriness, is one of the appearances of the father late into this addiction, this obsession. They talk about how there's like dirt around his mouth, like he's eating it too.
Yeah. I wrote, is father a mole?
A little bit. I also actually, now years on, I also think a lot about the Magnus Archives. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. It's a supernatural horror fiction
No, but
podcast that I
you've
enjoy.
recommended it several times to me.
Probably, and I'll probably do it again because I forget every time I've talked about it. But they're one of the recurring scary themes is the idea of being buried or the buried. And so I also had that on the brain when I was playing this again another time. So yeah, the developer Michael Lutz is a writer and narrative designer and also a PhD candidate who podcasts for a network called Ranged Touch. So he and another PhD, Cameron Kunzelman, who analyzes media and especially games, have made a few different shows under Ranged Touch, including, and this is actually how I knew about this person before my friend recommended this game, and I was able to make the connection between the two, but including a series called Homestuck Made This World. They have a podcast series analyzing, reading and analyzing Homestuck and its impact on internet media at large, which is actually like secretly quite big, even if a lot of people weren't as into the like niche but very popular webcomic when it was popular. I was very into it. I have subjected many a friend to the let me tell you about Homestuck phenomenon, including Emmy, although you've never succumbed, which is fine. I understand. These are two people who don't seem to have cared for Homestuck, but forced themselves to read it anyway. Like, even on Cameron Kunzelman's website, it's described as I was forced to read Homestuck for this, and like links their work. But I do appreciate their analysis of it, and I enjoy that they also make like original work that is rich for discussion along with that. So they're both good follows on Blue Sky, I would say, by the way, if you haven't followed them already.
I wanted to go back to something you said about like being buried as like a recurring fear. But I was thinking about like there's something about being buried and also something about descending because I was thinking about annihilation while
Oh.
I was reading this. Especially there's like a line about like once I found what had grown there, and that really made me think of annihilation and like this
Mm.
eerie experience of like something beyond you that is deep within the earth or
Mm-hmm.
below you is like I think sort of a very human fear. And it also felt very apropos that we read this when a game was recently released called A Game About Digging a Hole. Did you hear
Yeah.
about A Game About Digging a
I
Hole?
did actually. I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, so I it like made me think about that game because you could see how digging a hole could become an obsession, right? Like it's like
Yes.
there's something satisfying about like
Hmm.
uncovering and gathering, and then there's something unsettling about the obsession piece of it.
Right. Well, it's kind of, it also makes me think of a little more lightly the idea of going to the beach and just digging a hole all day at the beach. Because the compulsion is the sand is right there. And I always was more on the side of gathering seashells and making a cool sand castle. But I definitely also, when I went to the beach with my cousins as a kid, also was subject to the let's dig as deep a hole as possible and then bury someone in it up to their neck.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this line between like pleasure and fear of like things that we find pleasurable and then being taken too far is scary,
Hmm.
and it's making me think a lot about one of my very favorite classes in college, the uncanny in cinema. So, I really loved that class, and part of it was like I love Freud. I'm a big Freud head in that I think he's like very interesting and like philosophically very interesting. Anyways, one of the when I said like this line between pleasure and fear is I feel like that underscored a lot of this idea of like the uncanny is like there's a place where like things are pleasurable and like satisfying and intriguing and like fun for our human brains to mess with, and then there's a step too far and that's where it becomes uncanny.
Yeah, the Unheimlich, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Which is funny because that's basically it translates to like unhomely. So the fact that this also takes place in a home.
Yes, yeah, like haunted houses, the hearth, and this piece of like, what if good thing, but too much
Hmm.
and bad?
Have you ever read House of Leaves?
No, it's been recommended to me many times, and I just have never, I
Yeah.
just ultimately never read it.
I do think in the end you would like it because it is so much about like an uncanny home. I think of it again when I play My Father's Long Long Legs because I think of like the happy family above, everything appearing normal from the outside, but then these like secrets below. The imagery is really good. Now I'm also just thinking, by the way, of the title of this. I know it refers specifically to the long, long legs that we see in the very end, but it also does make me think of the phrase of like casting a large shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like how your parents and other figures from your childhood can loom so large over you, especially when you're small, and then as you grow, that shadow is still there.
I was thinking about that too. Like the sense of like when you're small and how much bigger people are than you and the
Mm,
kind of like comfort and fear that can come from that.
yeah.
And
It's
like this idea of like their father is so like is so tall and they're because they continue to grow taller as the main character is also growing taller and they can never sort of catch up with that like growth.
mm,
They'll always be this much more tall than them.
right. And the important thing about the main character versus their younger brother in the story is that the main character remembers a time from before their dad was obsessed with digging in the basement. Meanwhile, the younger brother was born basically around the same time it started happening, so the younger brother has only ever known their father as this like gangly basement figure and at first doesn't really understand why it might be off-putting or bad. So that so their father will always loom that large for them because it's all they've ever
Mm-hmm.
known.
So there's a lot of like scary games on Roblox. And one that I came across recently that I told you about is like Weird Dad Simulator or like yeah, I think that's one where it's like your dad is like he's very nice and like you have to do stuff with your dad, but you have to get in bed by 9 or dad will be angry. And so there is this sort of like, and these are clearly a lot of these games are made by like children. You can tell based on a lot of the grammar and typos and like weird structure to these games. But there's something about like kids have an intuition and a sense of things that are like deeply unsettling and frightening. And it's a lot of times it's like when things deviate from how things are supposed to be. I think there's also just like a lot of kids out there exploring like I think that's especially an age of like exploring what feels safe and what feels scary and like pushing at the boundaries of like what feels scary. So I think that's maybe part of why there's like so many of these scary games that are popular on Roblox. I mean, and like horror games too, right? Like people enjoy horror. But just that sort of sense of exploration when you're yeah, like 10, 11, 9, starting to push at these seams of like oh, it's kind of thrilling to be for something to be scary in this way.
Where scary doesn't mean just bad, but kind of exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's it for what we have to say about our snack mix. But I enjoyed these snacks.
If we were to assign a snack mix item to each one of these games, which part of a snack mix would each be?
So I'm picturing, my brain immediately goes to, rather than like trail mix, although maybe you're thinking of trail mix, Chex Mix, which I make a good like homemade version. So everything in there is something that I've already chosen. I would say in terms of like eatability, like I usually put Cheerios in, and those really soak up like the butter and like the sauce, and those are my favorite to just like eat up because they're so small and delicious. That is what the Scale the Depths game is for me, because it has that wonderful loop of like I will continue eating these. I think that I would say for Bulbo's belief system, that one is maybe the cashews for me, because I put in cashews instead of like almonds or peanuts, because I really love the taste of them, but they're a little harder to like eat a lot of, and also they're expensive, so I often just don't have much of them in there. And there's actually protein involved, unlike the rest of the like it's good for your brain, unlike literally everything else in my snack mix. So that's Bulbo's. And then I think in the end, my father's long legs are any of the checks that I actually put in there, because it's like a staple. It's something I return to. I don't think they're creepy though. I don't know how to say like this part of the snack mix is creepy. So I don't really have a creepy analog in the mix for those.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you?
I agree with much of your reasoning. I think for me, Scale the Depths is like either pretzel stick or a bagel chip, especially if it was in like a cheesy kind of snack mix where it soaked up some of the cheesy flavor. Because yeah, it's just really fun to revisit and like very like chompable. Bulbo, I think, is like a classic pretzel shaped pretzel. Because it's got the twists and turns and like a little bit of salt. And then Father's long legs is, I think it's like the wheat Chex Mix, where it's like kind of harder and darker. And I avoid it in my Chex Mix. So
that's okay. I'm sorry I made you play a creepy game. I really appreciate you trying anyway.
No. I'm glad that we played it, and I'm sort of playing up that I'm a baby. I tend to avoid these. So let me complete my wheat Chex analogy, which is that I tend to avoid it, but they're an essential piece of, the flavor profile of Chex Mix.
There we go. Great question. When we do another snack mix, because we will, I like going on Itch and exploring stuff from smaller creators or people who are just experimenting. We'll definitely have to keep comparing the parts of the snack mixes. Maybe next one is a trail mix.
Yeah.
Throw in some M&Ms.
Yeah, just to mix it up. Yeah.
So that's our itch.io snack mix. I am really excited to do this again sometime soon for the pod. And I hope you all enjoyed. And please play the creepy game. We'll link everything, so you guys can go check them all out.
It's not that scary. It's just unsettling.
Unsettling for sure.
I did really appreciate you telling me that like there's not jump scares in it
Hmm.
because I think that's something that like my body has a hard time calming down after being like
Same.
surprised. So I appreciated that that wouldn't happen, and it made me feel a little bit more reassured when you're in the flashlight scene. All right, do you want to talk about upcoming games?
Yes, please. Tell me what's coming out soon.
Okay, I'm going to mention two games that have already come out, which were on our list before, and then we've learned a little bit more about, and we're very excited to play, or at least one of them, which is Blueprints, which came out on the 10th and is a genre defying puzzle adventure, and you're exploring like different shifting rooms in a mansion. And there has been a lot of buzz and excitement about this game, so we're both really looking forward to playing it. I'm going to play it on my PS5 because it sounds like there are some issues with the cutscenes on Steam Deck, which I don't know if they've like how fast they'll be able to work through that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it on PS5, and then you're playing it on your laptop, right?
On my laptop, and I'm really excited for it because I love nothing more than a weird house, than spaces that are different on the inside than on the outside, and it's even been the subject of some of my work before, so I'm going to be eating this up. And puzzles, of course. I like puzzles.
I just laughed when I was looking at it on Steam, and Steam said that it was similar to other games I've played, which was Hello Kitty Island Adventure. And
I'm
I'm like,
desperate to know.
how? Why? In what way? There is a mansion, there is like a haunted mansion in Hello Kitty Island Adventure where the rooms change, so maybe it's that.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. The other game I wanted to talk about that's already come out came out April 8th. Locomoto is a life sim adventure. It's self described as a cozy game. And generally, the loop seems to just be you're like a cute little conductor guy on a cute little train, and you can decorate it and you can help your passengers complete quests. It seems like you're not always locked to the train, like there's an outside world. I like a game like that where you have like I love Spiritfarer for a lot of reasons, but one of the things is just like it's fun to customize a vehicle that's transporting passengers and interacting with passengers. So I wanted to bring that up to contrast it with another game that is coming out, which is coming out on April 23rd, which is Beholder Conductor. And so it's a spin off of the Beholder series, which I was previously unfamiliar with. Do you want to do a quick description of Beholder, Annie?
So I have played the first Beholder. It was on the Switch port, and in those games you play as a landlord or at least a building manager who, in a totalitarian state, is being required to spy on the tenants and report them to the government. And it seems to take a lot of its stylistic and gameplay cues from Papers, Please, which is another totalitarian state administrative game where you have a lot of choices about what you're actually going to tell the government, what you can get away with, what you can't, trying to protect your own family and resources while either trying to protect others or selling out others. It's very stressful. It's very well done, I will say, but it's kind of like there's certain movies that I enjoy and appreciate the artistry of and have only watched once and have no plans to watch again because they're so unpleasant. And that's a little bit how I feel about Beholder. But they're cool.
Gotcha. That makes sense and is unsurprising to me based on how it's described. Like, I don't know that I can dedicate myself to a game where you're playing as a agent of a totalitarian police state. But this seems to be set in the same world, but in this one, you are a conductor of a train, monitoring passengers and, quote, maintaining order by reporting intimidation, searches, and ejection. So I just wanted to, that's why I wanted to bring up Locomoto. As a, you have two train games to choose from. One is cute little animals having a cute time on a train. The other is you are an agent of a totalitarian police state on a train. So those are your options for train games this month. Our final game that I wanted to mention that comes out April 17th is Rusty Rabbit. So I've been seeing stuff about this around. Mostly just images of the main character, which is like an older, very cute rabbit who is like kind of a grump and is maybe an alcoholic who holds a carrot like a cigar, which I appreciate. And it is a 2.5D action platformer, and you play as this rabbit controlling a mech after rabbits have sort of taken over the world after humans have died out. So, like, what more can you want than a rabbit controlling a mech, in my opinion? So that's releasing on Switch, PS5, and Windows. So I'm interested to play that again. I think I mentioned this last time with Peppered, but I haven't played a platformer in a while, so that feels like it could fill a hole for me right now.
Some of these other rabbits look so threatening. Like, I mean, they're cute, but they're also intimidating.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited.
All right. Yeah, that's it for games for me.
Okay. Well, that's it for now. But till next time.
Yes, until next time. Bye.
Bye.